Redditors who went out for cigarettes and never came back. Why did you leave? Where did you go? What is life like for you now? Serious. Story 1. Throwaway for good reason. I've always lived in an abusive home, both mentally and physically, and never saw a proper way out. I started working at 14 years old in a convenience store for $8 an hour and hid all of the money I made in a locked container in a nearby wooded park area. I did this because my parent would have taken my money if they knew I was working at all. By the time I turned 18, I had close to $10,000 saved up and had finished high school. I was supposed to start university that year, but early on in the summer, I waited until my parents went out to work, found and took all of my documents, unenrolled out of the university program I was supposed to be in, and left. I took a bus to Alberta, and Eve been living here since doing labor. It's been a year and a half and they haven't searched for me yet, not that I'm aware of at least. How is my life now? I'm poor, barely getting by, but at least I'm living alone and happier than I was before. Edit. First of all, I want to thank all of you for the kind words and support that you've written to me in this thread. Originally, I wasn't even going to write this because every time I think about it, it brings me on the verge of tears. It's definitely something I try to avoid discussing in real life. Reading the comments reminds me that Reddit has a great community. Story 2. Lived in an abusive house with my mom, got a job after college, and in 3 months rented an apartment and went home, took a garbage bag full of clothes and booked it. She didn't want me leaving because she was talking all of my money. She would take my car when I didn't pay her my full paycheck. I had to resort to pulling fuses when I parked because she would hide my car on different streets trying to get me fired. Even in college I had finals to graduate and took my car and I had no way to get there, had to rent a car just to take my finals. God, the stories I could tell. Anyway, waddled in the apartment with my garbage bag and nothing else, slept on the floor, and for the first time felt peace. Now have a decent job, house, wife and a kid. Edit. Since there is a lot of interest in my story, I'm open to questions. Edit. 2. You can also ask on this casual may ask away. Story 3. I was living with a very mean and controlling girlfriend. If it wasn't her way or all about her, she threw a fit. One day I had enough and said I was going to the store and just kept driving. I literally drove for 12 hours and showed up at a friend's house 5 states away and asked if I could crash on his couch. I called my boss and said I wanted to quit work. He was pretty cool about it. He knew my girlfriend and actually set me up with a job in my new city. I have never spoken to my ex since. Soon after my relocation I met my now wife and I could not be in a better relationship. Best thing I ever did. Story 4. Just failed out of college. Moved back in with my dad. Things weren't going real well between us. I was depressed and not really going anywhere. I was angry at my dad because he came down on me so hard, but I was mostly angry at myself, and his attitude toward me just kind of compounded it all. Anyway, one day after being out at a friend's house and hanging out all over the city for a couple days, I finally came home and things around my house were just tense and I felt like nothing and like I would never get out from under this weight, so I just started packing some stuff. As I was leaving I remember I was coming out of my room with a bag. This wasn't unusual because I would often take a bag with me when I'd be gone to a friend's house. But today, my dad was standing at the top of the steps just looking down at me. I remember very vividly him standing there with his hands in his pockets kind of looking at me then looking away, and he quietly just asked, "Where you going, son?" I just looked up like everything was normal and just said I'm going to SO's house. He nodded slowly. "When you coming back?" I shrugged slowly. I don't know, Dad. Somehow he knew. I could feel it. I never came back home. Days turned into weeks and months and then years. I could tell he knew. It makes me so sad now when I think of it, like I tore his heart in two. He has never been a very expressive man, but I could just tell how sad he was. I needed this though. I needed to go off on my own and suffer the real world and grow up some. It still hurts my heart to think about him slowly nodding after I told him I don't know, Dad. Edit. Hey guys. Sorry, I didn't think this would have gotten much attention. I'm updating this from my iPad. I want to thank all of you for your kind words and even the ones calling me out for being selfish. Sorry if I worried you guys. All two of the emotion you read was in me looking back on the moment. First, I'd like you all to know I have been in contact with my dad since I left, and things are pretty good. I left during a time when cell phones were not popular and I spent a lot of time on the streets. At first with the only thing I owned being a car that I kind of lived out of. Eventually a good friend of mine had his family take me in and I spent years helping their family while kind of searching for what to do. During this time I would periodically just speak to my dad and stepmom and mom and stepdad on the phone every few months. They knew I was alive and well. My dad never really brought up the fact that I'd left, and would just make sure I was doing alright. We just don't have a relationship where we express much. I think he understood as time went on. See, he has this idea of how I should have progressed through life. I wasn't good at his plan. I was too immature. I left not because I was unhappy with him and what he provided me, but more so that I could stand shoulder to shoulder with him and make my own successes. I just wasn't who he expected me to be, and it took a lot of growing away from him for us both to understand that. After a few years I went to visit him in his office, and it turns out he had bought me a cell phone, my first. It was enough of a sentiment for me to understand that he understood what I needed. He just wanted to talk to me occasionally. I tell my dad I love him every time we talk. We live in the same town, so visit him and my stepmom with my girlfriend when I can. They love her more than me. A lot of you took the time to write really heartfelt comments, so I will take the time to reply when I'm not on an iPad later today. Anyway, thanks guys. Story 5. I was living with my parents. I was 17, they told me to leave, then tried to stop me from leaving. I have been in an abusive relationship with my mom and my stepdad for years. Friends helped me load the car. That was 12 years ago, never been back. Story 6. I left my home like this. One night, I just packed the essentials into my backpack, walked to a train station and got on a train to Newport News, Virginia from Pasco, Washington. No one knew I was gone until 3 o'clock the next morning. It was to be with a girl my family was totally 100 against. That was a year ago. It's all working perfectly. I am happier now than I ever have been before. Story 7. I did this, basically, told my parents I was going for a hike in the woods for a few days. Instead took a flight to Europe and joined the French Foreign Legion. They figured I was dead for a few weeks, but eventually they figured out what I had actually done. It's been almost 2 years, and I'd still rather not see them ever again. But one of these days I'm gonna have to go back and see all my younger brothers who still live there. As for why, it's a long story. I didn't have the greatest childhood. Basically, I decided I had nothing better to do and life was boring so I might as well do something stupid or crazy. So I just left and never looked back. Whether or not I'm better off now than I was before is debatable, but at least I can say I've done something with my short little life. Edit because everyone keeps thinking I just up and left for no reason. Hey race, a bit of background info on my life. Parents were our religious fanatics and complete narcissists with their own special brand of Christianity. They homeschooled me my entire life until I was 17, at which point they kicked me out due to religious disagreements. I managed to survive for around half a year by myself. Unfortunately, I was kinda lacking in the life skills department. Basically until I left at 17, I never had any friends, never left the house without my parents, and had no diploma or any other record of me doing school. I also found myself kinda lost without someone yelling at me all the time telling me what to do, so I figured I would join the military, just do as I'm told, not have to worry about bills or food or anything. Perfect. Unfortunately, my national army told me to wait 2 years and I have no patience at all, so the next logical step was obviously to join the FFL. So I didn't last long by myself, ended up coming crawling back to them and staying with them until I turned 18, but I wasn't idle. I saved up money, stole all my documents from the lockbox where they kept them, and bought a plane ticket, and so here I am now, halfway round the world, speaking a different language and protecting a different people. Story 8. Sort of. My cousin went for a walk once. He was dating this woman, who just an awful human being. She got pregnant, swore it was his, and once the kid was born the state went after him for child support, as he wasn't on the birth certificate, even though they were living together. Anyways, the paternity test came back showing it wasn't his, and she flipped her lid, just lost it. He asked her to calm down and said he wanted to take a walk to cool off. He left everything he owned, minus the clothes on his back and his wallet, and went for a walk that he never came from. A few years back the kid found him, he was 16 or 17, and went on some giant rant about him being a bum and whatever other nonsense. My cousin told him he wasn't his dad. The paternity test showed that, and he had no idea why she told him he was the father and abandoned them. Kid left a whole hell of a lot more confused than he showed up, I think. Edit com not quam. Story 9. I left my abusive husband 7 years ago. I just walked out the door. I never spoke to him again. I had squirreled away money for years, because he controlled my income. He had this idea that I was miserable because we didn't have children, so he tried to change that by raping me so I would get pregnant. He didn't know I was using birth control. I had resigned my job, so I just left. I couldn't bring children into that life. I went to live with my parents in a different part of the country. Now I live in a different country. I have a kind and loving partner, and we have a daughter. I'm happy most of the time. My family don't tell people where I live, in case he should find out. I don't know what happened to him. I hope he's dead. Edited to say thanks for the gold. I wasn't expecting that at all. Story 10. American that moved to Australia for 2 years. Got a girl pregnant, fell in love, saw her for the horrible person that she really was, but stuck it out. After the baby was born I had to be sure he was mine. The test came back showing no paternal match. I confronted her, we fought, she swore up and down it was a bad test. Wanting to believe it, I scheduled another test for the 3 of us to go in. 800 later, 2 days before the test, she played dumb and said she never agreed to that, told me to get out of their life, and that her child was not a science experiment. I stayed with a friend a couple days then came back. She acted like nothing happened, and wanted to just move on. Another test was no longer an option in her book. It was the hardest decision of my entire life, and it still makes me sick to think about. A week later I scheduled a flight back to California. I've been back for 4 years now. We had talked a bit over the year after I left, but just went back to her wanting to fight. After some antidepressants and heavy drinking, I'm finally starting to feel whole again. I look at the world very differently now. Edit. Thank you everyone so much for your kind words. Uplifting really. I miss that little boy with all my heart. He still has my name and a great deal of loving people that know who I am. I only hope he hears some of good about me when he is older. I did everything for them. I did what I had to. Edit again. Mixed responses. Either way, thank you for showing interest in my post. After having a laptop broken over my head, a vacuum slammed on me while I'm sleeping, and the brothers she filled with lies after me, I did what was necessary to defuse the situation. Thanks for the gold, kind sirs. Even though I don't deserve it, I was just sharing my story on a relevant post. Story 11. Parents were split and hated each other and would always put me in the middle. The drugs and alcohol they were both doing didn't help. Got kicked out of each of their places and went back and forth over some shitty circumstances involving them wanting all of my money to live with them, then playing the guilt card on each other that they took me in when the other kicked me out. got a steady retail job that I had to work 6 to 7 days a week at odd hours to get full-time. 2 weeks before Christmas, Mom said her place wasn't a truck stop and I couldn't come and go at all hours of the night and that I had to leave. Heard similar from her before and didn't want to go to Dad's again, so I called some family and they all refused to take me in because my mom had called and told them I hit her. Since I was still in the same house, I told her she was a horrible person, but an even worse mother, and left. Grandma knew parents were crazy, so she helped me as much as she could. Still get phone calls, mails, Facebook messages asking me when I'm going to stop being a so we can be a family again. Have seen both since. Invited some friends through Facebook to things that they in turn invited my parents to. Finally nutted up and told them both to get the out of my life. Mom still leaves me drunk high-creating voicemails in the middle of the night, either telling me she loves me or that I'm all that's wrong with her life. Dad sends me emails telling me to get the stick out of my because I'm still his son. Still spend time with my grandma. Friends' parents mean more to me than my own ever did. Now I've got a full-time job, an awesome dog, working on doing better in life in general, and trying to move into a place solo. Blood is not thicker than water. Will never speak to either of them again if I can help it. No regrets. Edit, I may not have known the original quote, but you get the gist. It just feels so much better to get their garbage off my chest, to be honest. As a child I held it in, and after I realized it made me the man I am. Thanks for kind words, Reddit. Story 12. Left my family close to 5 years ago to move to California to start a new life. I was 400 pounds. Living a lifestyle of prescription drugs and drinking at 17 with my family. I was good in high school and even went to college early but wasn't able to secure a loan there to continue past the first year. Dropped my life there and came here. It was very rough for a time, but I'm a lot better now. I had some help from my adoptive father but paid my way aside from the ticket here. I live on my own now and manage an office selling printer parts and various other moneymakers online. I started my own business last year and have been paying out of pocket to continue school here because the college I went to back home wouldn't release my transcript. I've lost a great deal of weight and am away from any unhealthy addictions. My family is for the most part very cross with me. My mother died 2 years ago nearly exactly. I had planned to go back for her birthday tomorrow incidentally in 2013, but she died 2 weeks prior to it. The only regret I have is leaving that door open. I like to think she'd be proud of where I went. Story 13. Left home shorty before high school graduation. Awful living situation. My parent was in town and told me to go home while she stayed in town. I went home and packed my stuff and left. Returned the car with a note and no one even bothered to call text me for a week. Story 14. Mom cornered me in the bathroom after chasing me around the house. Told me to punch her when I tried to leave. Punched me instead. I said I'd call the cops. She said she'd do the same as she's done with my ex-stepdad. Tell him I punched her and it'd be her word versus mine. Next morning, got into a broken Ford that was still on her name even though it was mine. Went to get the oil changed. Told the guy how long he thinks the car could make it. He said I'd be lucky to make it a block wouldn't go into reverse, among other things. All the same, I thought, I'm only going forward. 3 days later I drove from CA to MD and spent about 5 years without contact. Reconnected, foolishly thinking people change. People don't change. Last I heard from her, she wanted me to sign over my apartment in Russia so she could sell it and give me the money. I told her I'd happily sign it over, but she didn't need to pretend she'd give me a dime. Like one of the top commenters here, I've also been working since the age of 12, albeit for much less than 8 hours when I started paper route etc. Only reconnected because I have sisters, but the brainwashing she's done against me is done. Both sisters suicidal. One is pregnant at age of 18, failing grades. Neither will take me up on my offers to help I make 50-hour tutoring strangers. Sigh, I'm the pariah who left and traveled the world. But I'm a loser because, well, this thread you mom. Not really the same thing, and there's other drama involved, but to keep it short, went through a bad breakup. To get away from it I went to Sri Lanka in 2004 during Christmas. The tsunami happened, came back and told my family and about 2 friends I was leaving LA, boarded a plane a few days later for New York with only 2 bags. No apt, no job. Found a job in a flat within the first few weeks. I've been here 10 years now and have no regrets. Edit, she's married now and very happy. Took all of the plans we spoke about and applied them to her then new dude and did them with him. They live in the same area and XYZ. I'm happy for her regardless. She was a great person, we were just young. Story 15. I was left, my dad and my mom had a fight. My dad left then he killed himself. On one hand, I have no memories of him, I was too young. And I am very sympathetic to mental illness and suicidal ideation. I have had bouts of serious depression in my life. On the other hand, his absence, the lack of dad, left a huge gaping hole in my life. The strangest part is when I turned the age he was when he killed himself. I'm 36, and I'm older than my dad ever was. And I still feel young, like I have many years ahead of me. I wish I had had the opportunity to know him. Everything I know about him is someone else's memory. Thanks for giving me space to share this. Story 16. My father just walked out on us when I was 9. Walked out on everything. Racked up a load of debt before he went without my mother knowing. Through a gambling habit he had which we didn't know about until immediately after, and the hounding from the people companies he'd borrowed money from. Some of them were the kinds of people you didn't really want to owe money to, and the next few years were kinda rough. To add to that, my mother got sick around the same time and ended up unable to leave her bed for a few years. I think the illness was caused or at least exacerbated by the shock of his leaving. Not going to lie, it was really rough. I ended up getting homeschooling as they were afraid that he'd show up and pick me up from school one day, and after a little while of that my confidence was so drained that I avoided school as much as possible. Police were looking for him and eventually found him after a year or two in a town 200 miles away, but he didn't want to get in contact with anyone and nothing came of it. He was an ex-policeman, so I guess he knew what to say, or something. Then a few years later we got a phone call from a lady who had found his address book, informing us that he had died and she was looking for his next of kin. It ended with us traveling to where he had been staying, to find an elderly lady he was basically bleeding dry financially. Some of the stories Head been spinning to manipulate people were incredible. People there thought of him as a hero. He told them about how Head started a new life after nursing his sick wife with cancer until she passed away. How my brother had been inspired by his story and was working as a doctor abroad, and in his fantasy I had never actually existed. I can't really say I'm angry about it. I grew up afraid that I'd end up like him, but I think when you're exposed to something like that as a child you can either see it as an example of how to live or you can look at it and do everything in your power to avoid becoming it. Story 17. My mother left me at her door. I would visit every Saturday for a few hours. Then she wasn't there. After 10 years of extreme hate towards her, my uncle enlightened me. He said maybe she left you for the better. Turns out she has extreme mental issues, drug abuse. It's amazing how few words can change your life. Story 18. I have never left, but my brother has. One morning 2 years ago, I woke up with a killer hangover, rolled over in bed, checked my phone and saw several missed calls and a couple of voicemails from my mother and sister, along with a text message from my dad, "Call me." The first voicemail was from my sister, sobbing through the phone. She said, for the sake of the story, "Let's call my brother Tom. Tom just tried to commit suicide. He wrote us all letter and just call me please. Whoa, this can't be real." Then my mom's voicemail. "Tom attempted suicide last night. We haven't been able to reach him, but we suspect he might be heading your way. If you see him, call the police. We need to make sure he is safe." Oh, this is definitely real. We all somewhat suspected depression from him, but this was unexpected. Anyways, I got out of bed and put some clothes on. I open the blinds and I peek out the window, as if on cue. Tom's shitty old 96 Ford door. He was flustered, barely spoke to me but told me he was leaving for California, refusing to turn him into the police. I bought him lunch, filled up his gas tank and then I gave him all of the $26 I had on me and wished him the best of luck. He was back home within 2 weeks, remorseful and embarrassed. I'm glad he's back. Story 19. Went for a week's holiday in Ireland. Accidentally left the week before the one I had booked off of work due to a mix-up in my brain. After a few days of drunkenness I sent this postcard to work saying having a great time. Not coming back. That was in 2001. Been back to visit intermittently, and my parents' family were cool with it. Ireland is home now, though I have traveled a bit and lived in a few other countries briefly in the last 6 years. I have never regretted making the move. It was the best thing I ever did. Even back then in the vodka haze it just felt like the right decision. Story 20. I left my kids with my husband after quitting my job. He was sapping me of everything I could ever have emotionally and was neglectful to me as a wife. It was either leave or kill myself. I am now going through a divorce and I am getting my life together. My kids and I have a better relationship than ever because I am emotionally fit to care for them. I am now the mother they deserve. Story 21. I left Tacoma, Washington, U.S., and went south to Coos Bay, Oregon. I left friends, a girlfriend, some family I'm not very close to. I'm not sure why. I've ditched out a number of times to several different places. I just get tired of the same for too long. I don't have any illusions that my problem won't be waiting for me when I get where I'm going, but for a while I feel like a load has been lifted. Part of it is that I've said and done things that I am not proud of or that I am embarrassed or ashamed of. For that and for other reasons I make my bed but then I get sick of lying in it. Besides, who doesn't want a fresh start? One summer I had an anxiety attack which I didn't believe was a real thing until it happened. That turned into a whole year of just living in fear of another attack and that fear perpetuating more attacks. I really believe that everything caught up with me. I packed away too much and I imploded. Not fun. Fast forward to January 11, 2012. I checked myself into treatment, got clean, met a nice girl 9 months later who is in recovery too. Today I have over 3 years, she has 5. I am back in school and paying off my student loans, blew them on partying. I take medication for anxiety, which I never thought I would do because I think society is over-medicated and blah blah. Things are going good. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, 29, but I just don't feel like running anymore. At least not right now, I don't. I spoke to Alexandria, the girl I split on again. She still lives in Tacoma and she is okay. She was hurt and confused, but she has since got her revenge on me, which I think cheered her up. Good for her. I would have preferred forgiveness, but I'll take what I can get. Right now I'm somewhere near Seattle in a nice quiet apartment building full of old people. No sirens, no tweakers. Once I started facing my life, good things started happening. It's hard sometimes to maintain perspective. I get angry about stupid things, but I don't blame others. I don't punch holes in my drywall and I don't run from things. For me, I was 27 living with my very religious parents. I was miserable there and my boyfriend of 1 year invited me to come live with him. I packed up my stuff one day, wrote a note and left with him. My parents did not approve of intimate relationships outside of marriage. They would beat me up and probably him too if we would have told them ahead of time. I don't regret it all and it was the best decision I ever made. Story 22. I ran away from my family, my mom, and whatever family is attached to. I feel so much better. I resented the bullshit my mom would pull on me. She once got me pretty screwed around and told everyone I was abusing her, her finances, etc. She told me to my face she was going to lie and get away with it, and she did. And that was pretty much the family dynamic I was caught up in. When I called her an abuser, she couldn't handle it. It felt good to leave and not look back. I got a new job, and a new place, and changed numbers. Story 23. I kinda did this. Woke up knowing how much of a mistake going to art school in San Francisco was. Called a friend who came to the city later that day and helped me pack and left. I moved in with a different friend, got a job the next day, and went from there. I told my roommate when they called a few days later I was in school housing, so I didn't them over, and a friend from work the day I left when she called wanting to get some dinner. Never regretted it, because eventually it led to my spouse and kids. Edit. No guys, this is not from him. I am realizing I should have sued the out of the writers for stealing my story though. Story 24. I know of 3, all with some serious mental illness. First one left family, was an army vet, went down in a plane crash or something in the military, ex-alcoholic, was gone for almost 9 years before they found some trace of him in a halfway house. Second guy had mental illness, heavy drug and alcohol illness. Parents sent him to the Navy. One day he was gone, no word. 45 days later he reappeared, spent time in Navy jail, not sure how it works for drug use, dishonorably discharged. Last guy I knew was in school, everything seemingly fine, then gone for 2 years, comes back, said he was in witness protection. Turns out he was in jail for almost killing somebody. Story 25. Well, this isn't me, but a friend of my dad's friend or drinking buddy. They're both pretty bad alcoholics. Anyways, we'll call him Derek. Derek and my dad met when I was around 10 to 12 years old. They became best friends, drinking buds. He would spend every day there. Derek was also Scottish and immigrated sometime around 2003, I think. Derek owned the local corner store, had to declare bankruptcy, moved to the city. Fast forward about 8 years. Derek is unhappy with his life and has gotten in touch with an ex-girlfriend in Scotland. Derek leaves his wife of 25-ish years, son and daughter, 3 grandchildren all behind. But didn't actually leave them formally. No, he went to work and just never came back. Sent an email a week later. I don't like Derek. According to him, he's happier than ever. TLDR, Scottish drunkard goes to work, leaves family behind, is a... Story 26. Wow, I just realized that this kind of applies to me. When I was younger, with my mother things were kind of rough, pretty abusive actually. Well, one time when I was 15 things got really bad. It started when her sister moved in. She treated us like slaves. We were expected to cook and clean for her and just generally be at her beck and call. Well, this one particular night I was expected to cook chicken for her and her boyfriend, then clean it up and basically be her little kitchen slave so she could be the fancy lady. This pissed me off to no end. I was expected to not only cook a meal I wasn't allowed to eat, then I had to clean up and do the dishes for that meal for some guy Eve never met so she can get laid. WTF, I refused. It turned into a big fight, so when my mother came home she got mad at me, she beat me, but that wasn't even the worst part that I was used to. She slapped me across the face with a slipper. That was by far the least physically abusive thing she had done, but for some reason it knew and it pushed me over the edge. I silently took it and went to bed. The next morning I poured out my book bag. I packed a few things that meant something to me. It still boggles my mind. Just picking what's important into a bag in the span of 15 minutes. It changes the way you think about things if you ever have to do that. Anyway, I packed a few things, and went to school. As soon as I got there I found a quarter, God knows where, and called a cab. It's funny now because I had to get the operator to dial because I was upset and couldn't figure out how to do it. I went to my grandmother's in the next town over. I didn't have 5 cents to my name. She might not have even been home. But I went. When I got there I told her I took a cab and I wasn't going back. She of course called my mom, who told my grandmother, and I quote, "Tell him he no longer has a mother." So I lived with my grandmother, switched schools, and no one ever hit me again, well, until my drunk dad moved in. But that's another story. She was my hero. She was always there for me. I used to look at the lights from my bedroom window and wish I was there with her. She died April 21st of this year. It's hard. My entire life from the point of 15 to 37 was devoted to her. Now she's gone. I still at night look at the lights. But this time they're the stars and the sky, and I wish I was with her. Story 27. I was reading all of these stories when I realized, this is me. Here's the short version. I was living with and dating an extremely abusive guy. He told me what to eat, when to eat it, what to wear, where to work and when to work, wouldn't let me go to university, wouldn't let me get a car, so he had to drive me everywhere. I was not allowed to have friends, talk on the phone, use computers, see my family, etc., etc., etc. He wouldn't even take me to the hospital when I was sick. My money was his money, and I was also his personal punching bag. Eventually, he allowed me to enroll in community college. I already had a BA, and wanted a MA, but he had me brainwashed and convinced I was too stupid. I convinced him to let me buy myself a car by saying I felt bad for making him drive me around when he could be working from home on his novel. Yup, gag anyway. He was cool with this as long as he got to pick the car. He picked a piece of car that was falling to pieces. He was a mechanic and had me convinced that the car could not go over 55 and wouldn't make it past the community college and back. Time went by. I made friends at the community college. X is not happy, boo-hoo. He belittles me, takes my money, emotionally abuses me, locks me in a basement and beats me for stupid reasons like breathing while he was playing a video game in such a way that it made him lose. So, I slowly started sneaking clothing items out to my car every day I left for class. Eventually, all of my clothing, which by the way, was in a suitcase because I was not allowed to have a closet or a dresser, was in the car. He picked me up from a doctor's appointment. I'm not sure why I didn't take myself, and said his niece and nephews wanted to come over for pizza. I told him I didn't think it was the best idea. He got angry. Punches thrown. We get to the house. I walk in, grab a box of I had put together, got in my car, and drove 11 hours to my parents' house. He cried like a baby. I laughed in his face. Turns out, that car could go 80 and made it 400 miles. Best decision I ever made. I am about to get my second master's and I have an awesome car that I bought with my own money. He can eat, edit spelling. I was sort of left behind. A friend left for smokes and never came back, leaving her 4-year-old with me. I wasn't ready to be a mom by any stretch of the imagination, but by the time we located the family and they said they didn't want the little guy, I couldn't imagine my life without him. It's been a struggle, but we are 10 years in and he has changed my life in unimaginable ways. Her loss is all I think when I see his smiling face every day. I don't know where she is. I never heard from her again, other than when she dropped some of his clothes off through a mutual friend. I'm glad she had never come back because I don't know what I would do. I think it would break my heart if he wanted to be with her.